Senator Rubio.
Yeah,
Senator Rubio.
Well, first,
Senator Cruz has called your immigration plan amnesty and has an ad out there comparing it to President Obama's. He says both of you support allowing undocumented immigrants legal status here in the United States after a background check, paying a fine, and paying taxes. Are those claims correct?
Well, first of all, before we do anything, and I've been abundantly on this, when I'm President of the United States, before we do anything on immigration, we are going to secure the border. And that's not just the physical border with Mexico. It's visa overstays. That's 45% of the problem right there. It also has to do, that's why we need E-Verify and an entry-exit tracking system and so forth. And until that happens, we're not doing anything else. And then we'll see what the American people are willing to support. And Donald mentioned, because he mentioned me in his answer, that his position on immigration is what's driven this debate. Well, the truth is, though, that a lot of these positions that he's now taking are new to him. In 2011, he talked about the need for a pathway to citizenship. In 2012, Donald criticized Mitt Romney, saying that Mitt lost his election because of self-deportation. And so even today, we saw a report in one of the newspapers that, Donald, you've hired a significant number of people from other countries to take jobs that Americans could have filled. My mom was a maid at a hotel, and instead of hiring an American like her, you have brought in over 1,000 people from all over the world to fill those jobs instead. So I think this is an important issue. And I think we all realize increasingly that's an important issue for the country that's been debated for 30 years, but finally needs to be solved once and for all.
Mr. Trump?
Well, first of all, self-deportation is people are going to leave as soon as they see others going out. If you look at Dwight Eisenhower in the 1950s, they started moving people out and the rest of them left. Self-deportation, as I really define it, and that's the way I define it, is you're going to get some to go and the rest are going to go out. As far as the people that I've hired in various parts of Florida during the absolute prime season, like Palm Beach and other locations, you could not get help. It's the up season. People didn't want to have part-time jobs. They were part-time jobs, very seasonal, 90-day jobs, 120-day jobs, and you couldn't get. Everybody agrees with me on that. They were part-time jobs. You needed them, or we just might as well close the doors because you couldn't get help in those hot sections of Florida.
My point that I made was that you had criticized Mitt Romney for self-deportation. You said that his strategy of self-deportation is why he lost the election. And I think in Florida would be surprised because, in fact, the article that was today, they interviewed a number of people that would have been willing to do those jobs if you had been willing to hire them to do it.
I criticize Mitt Romney for losing the election. He should have won that election. He had a failed president. He ran a terrible campaign. He was a terrible candidate. That's what I criticize Mitt Romney.
Well,
I mean, he ran one terrible campaign. That's an election that should have been won.
Well, in fact, I agree we should have won, and I wish we would have. But in fact, you did criticize him for using the term self-deportation. I mean, that's on the record, and people can look it up right now online. But again, I just want to reiterate, I think it's really important, this point. I think it's fine. It's an important point that you raise and we discuss on immigration. This is a big issue for Texas, a huge issue for the country. But I also think that if you're going to claim that you're the only one that lifted this into the campaign, that you acknowledge that, for example, you're the only person on the stage that's ever been fined for hiring people to work on your projects illegally. You hired some workers from Poland.
I'm the only one on the stage that's hired people. You haven't hired anybody.
Well, in fact, some of the people he hired.
I've hired tens of thousands of people over my job. You've hired
1,000 people
You've
from
had
another
nothing
company,
but problems
from another
with your
country.
credit cards, etc.
Let me say,
let
me finish the statement. This is important.
You haven't hired one person
He hired workers from Poland, and he had to pay $1 million or so in a judgment.
That's wrong.
That's a fact.
Totally wrong.
Well, people can look it up. I'm sure people are Googling it right now. Look it up. Trump Polish workers. You'll see $1 million for hiring illegal workers on one of his projects. Yeah, he did.
You know, it's interesting.
That happened.
I've hired tens of thousands of people over my lifetime. Tens of thousands.
Many from other countries instead of hiring Americans.
Be quiet. Let me talk. I've hired tens of thousands of people. He brings up something from 30 years ago. It worked out very well. Everybody was happy.
Paid $1 million.
And by the way, the laws were totally different. That was a whole different world.
Thank you.
But I've hired people. Nobody up here has hired
Senator
anybody.
Cruz.